Alright, this is the second version of this same video. The first one died due to technical reasons and I'm having to re-record it. I'm also testing out a handlebar boom, a GoPro handlebar boom that allows me to speak into the camera as I'm bicycling. And so hopefully that creates a enjoyable view. Anyway, let's jump right into it. We have lived now in France, in Grenoble, France, for almost 3 years. And although there have been a lot of big changes, I want to talk about some of the sort of more subtle changes that we've experienced in our day-to-day lives. One of the more subtle changes is that we don't use a credit card. Instead, we use a debit card and pay for all our transactions in either cash or using the debit card. And although we have bank accounts at 3 different banks, that's not a necessity, but it's a happenstance. None of them have offered us a credit card in the true sense of a American credit card. And we haven't got any solicitations in the mail for credit cards, so I kind of think that this is the way things are done here. And as a result, we just don't accumulate debt the way that we did in California. Back in California, we paid for a lot of transactions with the credit card as a matter of convenience. So that we wouldn't have to, constantly visit ATMs or carry around a lot of cash. And at the same time, it felt that the credit cards was a safer way to pay than using a debit card. But here, we've gotten in the habit of just using the debit card. Another thing is that we don't own as much. We seem to be part of more of a sharing economy. I don't know if I know a lot of Americans think of France as being socialist. Maybe it's related, I don't know. But for example, a lot of people here, it's not as big a difference between ownership of your home versus renting your home. In fact, I get the impression that renting a home is more difficult than purchasing one. It was pretty easy for us to buy an apartment, even get financing for it, even and it kind of had that instinctual American thing that we had to own. But I've heard a lot of nightmare stories about how hard it is to rent an apartment as a foreigner because the laws here are very strict about eviction, and therefore landlords really scrutinize your sources of income and aren't really willing to think outside of the box. For example, if you're getting your income from the US, they're looking for a local paycheck. But again, a lot of people rent their homes rather than own them. Car ownership. Back in the States, we had a car for every occasion. We actually had 5 cars at the zenith of our car ownership. I guess you could call it a zenith. It might be the opposite. But here, and then when I came here, I really didn't want to part with my Land Cruiser. Looked at importing it. Was told that could be really complicated and expensive. So looked at buying a car here. Kept looking at it, but we use this car share program that is really robust. Gives us a choice of many different cars, many new cars, and pays for gas. Everything's included: gas, insurance. And when I just priced it out, considering that here we don't really use a car on a daily basis, we use it for excursions to the countryside, or something that's not an everyday type of errand. So at the level of using a car once or twice a week, you know, this city's car share program that we use works out. And the fact that many of the cars are brand new, that we can choose anything from a subcompact to a utility van, makes it very convenient. And strangely enough, our bicycles are in a sort of a similar program. I pay $140 a year, but if you fall into certain categories like senior, which I'm close to, and or student, it'll be half that. And it includes everything. It includes maintenance, and they can bring it right in, get it fixed up. So they give you a loaner if they're going to keep it for a while. They have two-seaters. They have bikes with baby carriages built into them. They have electric bikes, but they don't have, like, you know, high-performance bikes like mountain bikes or road bikes for people who do it at a high level of sport. So if you do that, then you'll need to own a bike. But for us, it works out great. Restaurants. It's a lot cheaper to eat here, in part because there is no tipping typically. But generally speaking, the prices, particularly on alcohol, are much less than they are, at least so much less than they are in California. Also, that bad customer service that we've all heard about in France due to lack of tipping, we have not experienced it at all. In 3 years, I can't think of a single instance of bad customer service at a restaurant. So, you know, maybe that's a Paris thing. It's not a Grenoble thing. One of the odd things at restaurants is that 99% of the time, the check is not brought to you. You go up to the cash register and pay for it as you would in a store. One of the things that's surprising to me is how darn hot it is here in the summer. Now, Grenoble is known as being one of the particularly hot places in summer because it's in a valley surrounded on 3 sides by mountains. So I think kind of it acts as a bowl. And there's very little air conditioning, nor are there screens in the windows, but there's plenty of bugs. So one friend of ours told us that, well, before climate change, there really weren't any mosquitoes here. I don't know how accurate that is, but certainly I think climate change has played a role in how hot it is in the summer. Although France is never spoken of as being one of the least expensive places to live, even in Europe, our experience is that it has been much less expensive than living in California. Real estate, except for certain prime areas, is much less expensive. Healthcare, much less expensive, whether you're on the you know, universal health care or you're paying privately, it's still much less expensive. The quality is equal, if not better. Recreation is much less expensive. So, for example, a day pass at a ski area, we typically 1/5 the cost of a similar pass in the US. Private schools. Private schools typically run between $1,000 and $1,500 per year. And they're, my understanding is they're not purely private, that they still get subsidies from the government, and that's why they're able to do that. I don't notice quite as much of a reputational difference between private schools and public schools here. For example, here in Grenoble, I think the schools that are perhaps the most prestigious happen to be, there's a couple of them that in their public. But other than that, people also send their kids to private schools here. In fact, we're going to do it next year for our older son. Just because the private school that we're looking at has the coursework that he wants. One of the other really shocking things about schools is that many of the public schools have boarding facilities, and that's because a lot of the kids from the rural villages will go to those schools, and in a video that I don't know, have I already done the educational video or not, but if I haven't, I will. Schools specialize in different programs. So sometimes the kids are willing to go, the parents are willing to have their kids go long distances or board in order to get that coursework. It's not always coursework, sometimes it's like a sports specialty as well. Staying on prices a little longer, things that tend to be more expensive here are certain consumer goods, sometimes electronics, not so much really, but clothing, fast fashion particularly. You know, I mean, I could always get clothes for insane prices at Costco. Yeah, but generally speaking, consumer goods are more expensive here. So the things you want, the things you want are more expensive, and the things you need are less expensive. How about that? The towns really do shut down here on Sundays. Most stores are closed. Yeah, that you see behind me actually is a Starbucks. It's a little crazy. They sell espresso for twice the cost, nearly twice the cost of local cafes. And of course they sell their foo-foo coffees, which I think the French are pretty good at making foo-foo coffees too, so I'm not sure why they exist. They have I think a bit of an allure to some young people. And besides being more expensive, I don't think the coffee tastes as good as most French cafes. That guy almost ran me over. You know, about those consumer prices, I wouldn't say necessarily that they're consistently more expensive. There are stores here that sell some things that are pretty insanely cheap, like Decathlon, which is kind of, it's basically a combination of, I don't know what you'd call it, looks like a Big Five sporting goods store, but maybe even more. And I mean, they sell all sorts of sporting goods, a good amount of clothes that your kid would use, and all of that is in a pretty good discounted prices, similar to what you find at budget stores in the US. On the other hand, recreation and schooling and those things you need do tend to be consistently less expensive here. A lot less homeless people here. There are some, but not nearly in the quantity of San Diego or Southern California. Not even 1/100th, I would think. I think, you know, some of the differences we experience on a day-to-day basis, well, a lot of it really, is due to the fact that we live in a urban environment rather than the suburban environment we lived in California. Though there are certainly suburbs here and, you know, little sort of countryside villages, I think that you know, that it's more common here to live in an urban environment than it is in the US. And as a result, yeah, the urban environments are nicer. Just more cafes, more restaurants, more public parks, more people using all of the above. Overall, life is less stressful because I think there's just less of a material overhead that we are, you know, working hard to maintain at all times, and always either in the process of fixing something or replacing something that broke, or, you know, whatever. Anyway, I've arrived at the Metro Velo headquarters here to trade in my bike for something that is a little bit bigger. Alright, changed my bike for a little bit bigger one. So we'll see how this one goes. It kind of reminded me of something at the train station, a little minor point, but and that's what this video is all about, really. It's the minor points, or it's supposed to be. The cabs here, I haven't figured out the dynamic, but they, you know, they're not all like yellow cabs, uniform color. They're in their normal car colors, but they're all like really nice cars. Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas. I'd say Teslas probably are the highest percentage of all the cabs. Interesting using this camera. I see views ahead of me that I want to show you, but you're seeing views behind me that I don't see that might be just as good. Although I don't think it could be better than this one. I may have to turn the bike around so you can see it. See the mountains and the flags. Down here right now it's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. But up there in the mountains, you can still see snow. That's why I like doing this on a bicycle. There's so many sights to see. So behind me, it's quite windy here. Behind me, you should be getting a good scene of downtown Grenoble. And then that, let's see if I duck out of the way. That structure over there used to be connected. That was the gates to the walled city. So the walls have been taken down, but the door, so to speak, the port, as they call it, is still there. So we've crossed over to the other side of the river, which I don't know if this would be Rive Gauche or Rive Droite, because it depends on which way you're pointing. Yeah, so I guess to summarize on the prices, maybe the most shockingly inexpensive thing here is the wine. And coming from California, where we pride ourselves on world-class wine, it was surprising to me that there were so many good wines here that were in the you know, $4 to $5 range. And yeah, so both that restaurant and the restaurant, probably they don't gouge the way to do it in the US. I mean, you don't have $12 glasses of wine, or even 16 I've seen in California. Here, a glass of wine, I've never seen it more than $6. Typically, it's in the $4 range. Or I should say euro range. And sometimes euro is parity with the US dollar. Right now, the US dollar is worth about 92 cents to a euro. Is that how it goes? Or 92, yeah, whatever. It's about 8% less than the euro. Anyway, that about wraps it up. You can see there's a little rush hour going on now. Thank you.